Welcome to the Ruby Roads podcast. I'm David Kimura, and today on our panel we have Jason Sweat.
Hello.
And today we are talking with Samuel Joseph. Now, do you go by Sam or Samuel?
Just Sam. Sam is
okay,
the less formal.
Great.
It's all good.
Well, Sam, today, can you give us a bit of your background and let us know a bit of what you do?
Sure, yeah. So I am the co-founder and chair of the Board of Trustees of the AgileVentures charity, and we get people together from around the world to form into small Agile software development teams and have them do software development for nonprofits and charities in other places around the world, other deserving causes, shall I say. And also I have sort of an academic background with degrees in cognitive science and computer science. And I sort of, over the years have been jumping backwards and forwards between industry and academia. And I've now ended up in this sort of weird twilight zone called the charity sector, where we're having quite a lot of fun. But that's sort of my background.
Great. And do you do much development, or do you primarily focus on the education sector?
Well, it's sort of, it comes and goes in fits and bursts. I mean, I've been programming in Rails since like about 2007, and I do as much programming as I can. I love programming. I'd like to do more, particularly actually since I was last on Ruby Rogues last November. We've now been officially approved as a charity in the UK, and that's unlocked various resources for us, but it's also unlocked even more admin work for me to do. So the admin work seems to fight with my ability to spend time coding. But so it goes backwards and forwards.
Yeah, I guess you can be a business manager or a programmer. The two don't really overlap sometimes. Great. Well, can you give us a bit of the background of AgileVentures? What is your guys' goal, and what do you do there?
This episode is sponsored by Compose.io. Databases are arguably the most difficult part of the stack to manage. The last thing you want is to wake up at 4 a.m. because the database failed and you have no backups. Compose has all that covered for you, so rest assured that your database is fast, reliable, and always on. It's production-ready cloud databases on AWS and GCP for SoftLayer. So go check them out. You can pick from 9 databases including MongoDB, Elasticsearch, Redis, RethinkDB, MySQL, and one of the latest, ScyllaDB, which is a fast drop-in replacement for Cassandra. All databases come with guaranteed RAM, IOPs, and CPU that auto-scale, automatic daily and on-demand backups, high availability nodes, security you can count on with private VLAN, IP whitelisting, SSH and SSL, two-factor authentication, and much more. Deploy your database in minutes and they'll take care of all of the administrative tasks like patches and upgrades. Setup is fast and easy, so go try them out for 30 days free at compose.com/devchat.
Sure. Well, I guess one thing to do is to refer folks back to the previous episode I was on, where we were sort of mainly focused on AgileVentures, but just to give a summary. And of course, I have this general problem of speaking too long and speaking too fast. I'm trying to get better at communication. That's my goal, is now how to summarize briefly and concisely and effectively. So more about what AgileVenture is really boiled down to in terms of this charity now is we have 2 goals. One is about just trying to help other organizations that maybe have limited resources and don't have access to, top bucks for the, getting their IT problems solved. And the other thing is education. And it's trying to bring these 2 things together. And rather than just purely being focused on education for education's sake, it's about saying, can we get groups together who are going to, form little learning teams, but can they be working on something that's actually for somebody, rather than a toy project that's then going to get thrown away at the end of the day, that it can actually be, a real project that will not necessarily be, huge long-term value, but is as a fantastic prototyping exercise for some charity that's trying to, a non-profit that's trying to work out how to get some problem solved. So there's sort of twin goals of, open, accessible, in-context education to all, and, helping deserving causes around the world.
Yeah, that's great. So, who are, I guess, some of your partners that you work with? So I guess you work with developers, to either learn how to program or to collaborate and work in a team on some projects, and maybe just to kind of raise that self-worth to say, hey, I can do this job. But who are some of the partners that you guys kind of work with or collaborate with to really help bring up some of these newcomers? Yeah,
so I mean, the big connection that we have is with the this edX MOOC, or massively open online class, called Agile Development Using Ruby on Rails. And so I'm one of 3 instructors. There's also Amanda Fox and Dave Patterson at UC Berkeley. And this is now, it's been running for like 5 or 6 years. We're just 5 or 6 years. We're just about to start a new run of the MOOC coming up in, I think, May 7th or 8th. It's going live. But this is a kind of 2-parter, ultimately like a 12-week course or so, completely free, where you can, get the UC Berkeley insight on software engineering, Ruby on Rails, and do these online coding exercises that get checked by the auto graders. I mean, back in the day, this was exciting. 2012, woo, new things, auto graders. Now everybody and their uncle has got one of these MOOC courses. But so we work closely with that course, and AgileVentures provides like support in terms of helping the students in that MOOC pair program with each other. And then we've got pathways for people coming out of the MOOC to kind of get involved in AgileVentures and sort of take the development skills, the Agile development skills, the Ruby on Rails skills that they've learned in the MOOC onto real projects with different charities around the world. And then, so, actually, thanks to Ruby Rogues, when we were on last time, as a result of being on Ruby Rogues last time, Wikimedia EDU got in touch with us and said, hey, we love that concept of AgileVentures, having heard about it on your show. And so they've now given us a grant, and we're working with them in their it's a Rails and React system. And they got a fascinating system there where they kind of structure to help instructors around the world use Wikipedia as a kind of not just an educational resource, but actually set assignments for students to kind of contribute to Wikipedia. And then sort of there's like dashboards. And so the main project there is the Wikipedia EDU dashboards. We're now project managing groups of volunteers to do that for Wikimedia, which has been huge. We're also working with NHS England. We have the National Health Service here in the UK, and we're now developing systems for them as well. I think partly, this year, it's a big year, having been, officially recognized as a charity. Appearing on Ruby Rogues late last year was a big stepping stone as well. But yeah, different charities. We've got a new system live for this. There's a Swedish animal charity. There's a lovely project that's been developing there. And then there's a Syrian orphans charity. There's a employment charity in Detroit, and so on. And the number of projects, is starting to go up, and the different partners, these, charitable organizations, the non-profits, are working with more and more of the students coming out of the MOOC, but also not just out of the MOOC. It's out of boot camps. There's this huge number of bootcamp graduates who have learned the basics of coding, but really want to get their hands dirty on real projects. And it's all kind of just a link back to your original question, which is it's not so much about learning for code. I mean, if people come in and say they've got like no coding experience and they want to learn to code, I mean, we happily take people with no coding experience who want to get involved in marketing or project management or those sides of the projects. But I think if you haven't learned any code at all, they're like Free Code Camp, Codecademy, Code School, Code Wars. I think there are other resources that are kind of, and then even going to a boot camp or doing the MOOC. Those are the places where you might learn to code. And AgileVentures is more about once you've reached that level where you're feeling some level of competence, but you want to take it up now and say, okay, I want to work with a real client, and the push and pull of real client demands. That's what we're kind of about.
Wow.
I have a couple questions for you, Sam, some of which you might have kind of answered partially already, but I'll ask anyway.
Sure.
Which is, how does this MOOC kind of relate to everything else that you do? And who is it for exactly? And if I'm interested in it, how do I sign up and take it?
Sure. So the MOOC is, it's really the structure of it is the brainchild of Armando and Dave at UC Berkeley, and it's there taking what was the original UC Berkeley software engineering course and bringing it up to date with modern tools. And they chose Ruby on Rails, and they kind of really integrated the Ruby on Rails into the course, and at the same time as teaching the design patterns and the solid principles and all these great things, but doing it like in the context of real working software. So that's kind of the core of it. And the MOOC itself is again, it's probably not aimed at somebody who's just starting out. I think there are other, I think MIT has some lovely intro to programming MOOCs, which we usually, CS50, we usually recommend people go towards. The sort of prerequisite for this MOOC is that you kind of already know one object-oriented programming language. You've moved beyond scripting, you've got some sort of base there, and this is, okay, now, but maybe you don't know so much about software engineering principles, or like someone says solid, and you're like, yeah, man, solid, and you don't realize that the initials stand for or what have you. So that this is then a great free resource for anybody to go and take. It's available at edx.org. I believe the latest run, I think if you search for the Rails course on edx.org right now, you'll just see the closed courses. But I think it's going to be, actually, they even said, was it later today? But by the time we air, basically, if you do a search for Rails in the edx.org course listings, you'll see the course. And that's it. The next run of the course is starting. It's in, I think, the late 8th of May. And then we're actually going to be moving to a self-paced mode from full, where basically people will be able to take it whenever they want. We're just moving towards that. So that's answered some of your question there. I've kind of run out of steam as my brain handles the logistics of the dates and things.
No, I think that covers it. And I was able to find it. I think I just Googled Agile development using Ruby on Rails.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it came up.
Yeah.
But it said like enrollment closed. So I was a little bit curious about how that worked. And it sounds like on May 8th, 2017, for listeners of future years, is when this one opens up. But then in the future, it won't be time limited. You'll be able to sign up anytime. Is that the idea?
That's the idea. We've been there's been a slow progress to that over the last year and a half. edX has been very keen on that. It's taken, there's various big institutions involved here, and getting that all set up has taken some time. But I think we're there now. We have an agreement for this is going to be one last run of the scheduled version of the course, where it gets, each segment of the sort of 12-week, split over 2 courses, gets released week on week. It's going to be like you can get access to the entire course at any time from full.
Cool. So how did you get started with AgileVentures? How did you kind of take this nonprofit from just an idea to fruition?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, the AgileVentures really started up because we had the people coming out of the MOOC, and we were hearing about how the Berkeley students were doing these great projects, and that they were using the Agile process where, to deliver prototypes rapidly, and every week or 2 weeks they would be showing a new prototype to these nonprofits, usually based in California, and getting feedback and iterating and doing that. And it just seemed like, we have to have that. And so, initially it was actually just using Skype chat with people, and that was, people started talking, and the prompting thing was I said, well, let's all reach out to our local charitable organizations and see if we can't find somebody who's willing to be an Agile client. And we did that, and I actually found up the road from me was our local voluntary sector center. And after speaking to a couple of charities, there was a group there saying, we'd love to have a system that kind of mapped the directory of charities in the local area and so on. And I started pair programming online with other MOOC students using Google Hangouts at the time, and used a quick Rails scaffold. For some people don't like that Rails scaffold, but just to say, look, we can get this started. Look, we can get up something. And we actually prototyped using Google Sites for that initial organization, and that sort of became the project. And we had this sort of placeholder. Sort of, well, I think it was initially called eSAS projects or something, which was the original name of the course. And then more and more people started to get involved. Thomas Ogman, who's now the founder of the Craft Academy Bootcamp in Sweden, he got involved and was project manager and said, right, yes, I love this AgileVentures idea. And, project managed the building of this website One, which was then building a Rails project to sort of house all of the different projects and try and help people get together and coordinate all the materials and so on. And then just over time, we've had, more and more people get involved, more and more charities that we've connected with who then want to work with teams of developers. And so now we've moved on from Skype, and it's a lot of it's Slack. So we're kind of continuously working, in the Slack environment. There's a Slack channel for every project and trying to hook people up. And, we now have, as a result of our official UK charity status, unlocks this AdWords advertising. You get like free $10,000 AdWords advertising from Google if you're a registered charity. And so now, the combination of the MOOC and the AdWords and so on, we have, developers and people, aspiring developers coming in, some people wanting to give back and mentor others. Some people just want to level up. Other people have been on a work break and they want to come back and get back into the swing of things. And for those people who, have got the enthusiasm and the drive, it's not for everyone because it's still kind of in that self-organizing phase. But so, people are coming together. The Swedish animal charity one is a really good example of one where they've got their MVP up and the client's very happy, and we've connected people in Sweden and the east coast of the US and the west coast of the US who love animals and are working together on this project. So it's I would love to be doing more and sort of scaffolding the way people are working together better. It's starting to gather the kind of critical mass that I've longed for it to move towards for a long time.
Well, cool. That's really great and interesting too. I mean, it sounds like there was a lot of work and stuff involved. I think for me, just taking a business and having this idea and going all the way to getting your nonprofit license. I mean, that's definitely a great accomplishment.
Thanks. It was certainly a milestone. Ironically, the sort of that licensing process was much more challenging to get the charity set up than I'd previously done for setting up, for example, my own company. Like I think in most countries, in the US and the UK, you can, you pay a bit of money, you can have that company created, overnight. Where the process for registering a charity in the UK was a lot more rigorous, a lot more red tape. Getting this board of trustees set up, getting the government departments to respond, and so on. I guess they're less incentivized to. I don't know if that's the I don't know. I think they're incentivized. Countries, they want more companies being started because they think, yes, company tax revenue, yes, let's make it easy for companies to be made. And like charities, okay, these guys want tax discounts. I don't know, at least in the UK, it felt like we were in the less well-supported stream, but we got there. A big thing that enabled, I had been running a boot camp in London for a couple of years, and then I took a break from that, and that sort of created some space, and now we've got this thing to the next level. I mean, I think the real goal going forward now is trying to make it completely self-sustaining as we start to get these contracts in from different organizations, and the number of premium members who pay for more support goes up. We're creeping towards that self-sustaining state. I think we're not quite there yet, but on the way.
Sam, you mentioned boot camps. That was actually something I wanted to ask about. Can you tell me about that boot camp a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So the boot camp in London, Makers Academy, is one of several boot camps in London. I think it might have been the first boot camp actually in London. And
what was the name of it?
Makers Academy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's not unlike some, like I think like General Assembly and Iron Yard, which are some more familiar in the US. They have branches in London, but Makers Academy is a homegrown boot camp that started, I think, around the time that before everybody and their uncle had a boot camp. So it started, I think, in 2013 or maybe it's even 2012. But yeah. So and it's a boot camp along the traditional model that I think people are familiar with, where they have a sort of a full-time 12-week course, and as it happens with Makers Academy, it's sort of Ruby, Sinatra, Rails, JavaScript, Angular, those sorts of things. And that was, the big thing for me, like going back much further, is that I've been teaching software engineering in bricks and mortar university, although doing a lot of it online. And that was fun, but I was always kind of, I don't know, like there's something about universities where it's great to be giving this well-rounded education, but you've only got students' attention for a relatively small portion of the week, and they're kind of often the students, I guess they're in maybe that 18 to 21 bracket. I mean, of course, these days there's many, the mature students coming back to university and so on, lifelong learning. But there is still, I think, in many of the bricks and mortar universities, there's people who sort of just come out of the sort of required education, and they're going on, and they're just sort of trying stuff out. And I mean, I think that's great. Some people derive enormous pleasure from that. I guess I found it, not quite so fulfilling to be working with people who, weren't necessarily really sure if they were interested in learning about software. And what was exciting about switching to the bootcamp model is here you had, in a cohort, a class of 30 students, 30 people are like, yes, we want to code and we're going to do it full time, all day, every day. And that's, there is kind of an intensity there that I love and is exciting. Although it can be very grueling doing that day after day after day. I think, that's one of the big challenges with boot camps is for both the students and the staff is making sure that it's kind of manageable for people long term.
Yeah. So it's 12 weeks. Mm-hmm. Does that feel like a lot of time or does that feel like a short amount of time?
Well, I think not having been one of the instructors rather than one of the students, it's difficult to know, to really know how the students experienced it. I think when people come to the end of it, they would say, oh, it's gone so fast. I mean, 3 months is not that long when they're in it. And I think there's this particular thing in boot camps, and you'll have a lot of people who are, very, very bright. They maybe already had successful careers in finance or marketing or design or what have you, but they've said, I've done that, I want to have a switch, I'm excited about this coding and making things. But I don't know if this is a completely true characterization, but it seems to me that when you're coding, you're repeatedly have your face forced in failure every day. Like again, you just have to in a way that, I don't know, I mean, I haven't worked in those other careers, but maybe in those other career paths, you're kind of not quite so, it's not quite so hard. When you can phone someone up and get them to do and they say no or yes, or whatever, it's much more kind of fuzzy. Whereas, you can be stuck on a bug in coding, for 3 days and it's like, you couldn't kind of be,
right.
You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, it is a little different. Like I worked in a factory for a while when I was younger. It was a shelf factory and I would just stack shelves all day. And it always worked. Every time I set a shelf on top of another shelf, I was successful with that. So a lot of other kinds of work don't have the extreme frustrations that we can be presented with in coding.
Yeah, my test suites would agree with you. Yeah, we actually, I've heard of Makers Academy. We actually had Melina Leach on here earlier this year, and she was a graduate from there, I believe. So, definitely have heard of it. So I have a question for you, Sam. Is AgileVentures, is this a replacement for boot camps, or does it go hand in hand with it? What's your kind of take on where this fits in with other boot camps and other, was it MOOCs? Like Code Academy and stuff like that.
This episode is sponsored by Hired.com. Are you searching for a new job? That can be stressful, scary, and time-consuming. Pushy recruiters try to sell you on roles you don't actually want, and the job boards make you feel like you're throwing your resume into a black hole, never to be seen again. And sometimes you go all the way through the interview process just to find out at the very end that the salary, offer, or company culture doesn't match what you're looking for. Hired is the world's most intelligent talent matching platform for full-time and contract opportunities in engineering, development, design, product management, data science, sales, and marketing. We make your job search faster, focused, and stress-free. Instead of endlessly applying to companies and hoping for the best, Hired puts you in control of when and how you connect with compelling new opportunities. After completing one simple application, top employers apply to hire you, and on Hired you receive personal interview requests and upfront salary information so you can make informed decisions about what opportunities to pursue over a condensed timeline. Hired offers access to more than 4,000 innovative employers, including big brand names like Facebook and smaller emerging startups. The size and type of company you want to connect with is totally up to you. And we help you find new opportunities in 17 major cities in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Open to relocation? Let them know. Your privacy and autonomy in your job search is of utmost importance. And if you sign up today using the show's link, that's hired.com/rubyrogues, you can get double the normal hiring bonus. That's $600 instead of $300. So go check them out at hired.com/rubyrogues.
Yeah. Well, I very much see it as not a replacement for a boot camp. I think boot camps are not for everyone, but I think certainly for some people, touching back on Jason's question about does it seem like a long time, that doing something full time for 12 weeks can be enough to take you over that hump. I think a lot of people find they're trying to learn to code from online resources, and they kind of get a bit of it, and without that kind of full-on intensity for some people. Some people, are completely self-taught, and that's great for them. Everybody's personality is different. I think some people can make really good use of a boot camp to take themselves up a level that puts them on that path to being, let's say, a developer full-time and so on. The way where I see AgileVentures is it comes after the boot camp, after the MOOC, after the CS degree. It's more about, how do you move beyond that next phase? How do you start not just making toy systems, but making systems that actually address people's needs? That's kind of the key thing. And the Hollywood boot camp story is that you graduate from that boot camp and you manage to get you jump straight onto that ladder, right? You get that entry level job. You're learning on the job. You're all the stuff that beyond what you could learn in the boot camp or in the university or self-taught. If you could just get into that situation and be paid to learn to code, and it would happily ever after. I think that it's difficult. That jumping onto that first rung of the ladder is really hard, and it's great if you can have some kind of framework where you can be working in a team on software and there's actually a client who might be changing their mind or saying, I do like that or I don't like that. And you can simulate to a degree some of that experience that you would have working on your first job. Do you know what I mean? Like I would say for a bootcamp graduate, spend half your time doing tech tests and interviews and the other half the time working on projects. It doesn't have to be AgileVentures, but I think you want to spend the other half of your time coding on, collaborative, I would recommend open source projects. And again, it requires, I think, a lot of motivation to do that well. And so if you've got a support structure around you that can help you do that, then so much the better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of us, especially entry-level grads, they often don't get the full picture. It's not until years of experience on the job do they really start seeing what does it mean to collaborate. It's not just programming with someone else and trying to avoid merge conflicts. There's a lot of human interaction that goes into it. And if you're kind of like an introvert like me, that, takes it's a learning process to learn how to collaborate with other people, how to communicate clearly. So I think that's really cool that you guys kind of add in that missing step. Now, do you guys kind of go further? Because, that's one part of being a collaborative full stack developer, but do you guys go into more of the server environments, or is it just strictly programming? Or,
No, but
yeah, go on.
Sorry to cut you off there. Yeah. Great question. And we definitely do go more in that, the full thing. And I think, each of the projects is kind of self-contained. And so, the project is going to involve people taking on all the roles, and then people are going to need to get their hands dirty with Heroku and AWS and DigitalOcean and Azure, and big shout out to them because they just gave us a load of free resources because we're a charity. I highly recommend becoming a charity. It's very you can unlock a lot of resources, but watch out for the admin that you also unlock as well. Yeah. But yes, I think that seeing the full cycle is really valuable. The challenge that we face sometimes is that there are a lot of people who want to learn to code, and they're saying, no, well, I just want to learn the coding bit. And I think if you just want to learn the coding bit and you want to focus really exclusively on that, then probably this sort of holistic thing that AgileVentures is doing is not necessarily for you. It's, I don't know. I think coding is this wonderful, magical thing, but when it's completely detached from actually solving some problem from someone, then I kind of lose interest to a degree. I still, I do katas and pair with people on those things, and it's a nice diversion. But for me, the exciting thing about code is when it connects to solve a problem for somebody. So it's not just about writing that code that's going to run in the Rails engine or what have you. It's about, okay, how can we get this code out onto Heroku or some other platform or Dree? There's a UK guys they're sponsoring us, and we're really grateful to them as well. I think that bigger picture is really valuable for the young developer, because you can do so much coding and say, well, we've got this all working. Oh no, now we tried to put it on the cloud hosting platform and the CSS things don't load, and it's kind of, do you know what I mean? So it's learning things like, let's just take our initial skeleton of the app and deploy that fully. onto the cloud hosting thing, make sure that all works, and then we'll start adding in the next components and so on. And that whole kind of, I think I the DevOps movement, I see the whole Agile thing as about trying to avoid having these silos of QA and testers and dev, the ops people and so on, and kind of bring them all together so that we can all see more of the big picture.
Yeah, absolutely. In that, the developer's famous last words, well, worked on my machine or worked in my environment.
That's right.
I can't count how many times I've deployed something, even, to a CI CD to just have it utterly blow up in my face. Environment variable or something was missing or some parameter wasn't compatible with that hosting environment or cloud environment. So, I think that's really great that you guys kind of take that full spectrum into play.
And I think there's something really important to teach new developers, which is nothing ever works on first try. People have this optimism, which is like, I always say that optimism is one of the greatest sins in software development, because nothing ever works on the first try. And if you expect it to work, you're just setting yourself up for frustration. Better to understand that things probably aren't going to work the first time you do it and account for that. And like you said, rather than building your whole application and then deploying it, deploy the skeleton of it first, make sure that works. And then everything from that point on is only incremental, very important thing to teach new devs.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't think I've ever taken an app from beginning to finish, deployed it without ever testing or having nothing go wrong. There's always been something that I missed. Even today, it's something stupid or something crazy that I just completely forgot about. So, yeah. And if someone gives you a hard time, to the listeners, if someone gives you a hard time about making a mistake, that, it wasn't costly, it's not like it did a bunch of damage, but they just make you feel bad about it, don't let that get your spirits down, because we all make mistakes, and I make some pretty dumb mistakes on a daily basis. So, it's great to have.
Me too. Amen to that.
It's great having, that collaborative work, to help one another, iron sharpens iron, help each other out. So I think what you guys are doing there is great.
Yeah, it was interesting that you say that. I think one of the things that forms a barrier for people taking part in these kind of online collaborative projects is often a fear of failure. They're afraid that, if they're going to make a mistake and someone else is going to see it. And I think people would often, much rather just work in isolation on their own thing, so that because they feel that, oh, right, if I'm going to go and start working with these other people, I'm going to have to know my stuff. And if I don't know all my stuff perfectly, or if I haven't got to a certain level, I can't start contributing. I can't be there. They're just going to. I think we all fear this to a certain extent. I mean, I just make sure that I fail regularly in public, day in, day out, and I think I've gradually got slowly immune to it. But it's it's funny how when coding is such a intellectual pursuit in some ways, that I think there's the emotional barriers that are the biggest, this fear of failure. And then also, strangely enough, the inverse thing, which relates to what Jason was saying, which is this lack of paranoia. There's an expectation that, if the documentation says that it should work this way, then I can type it and it'll work. And it's like, it's like you've got to be so pessimistic, in Jason's terms, perhaps, about, and sort of really feeling your way with the kind of stick in the mud thing. Does this work? Does this work? Does this work? Does this work? To make sure you don't fall into that pit.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with some good old puts debugging, and stuff like that to try and figure out what the heck is going wrong with your application. So.
But I guess the thing that I think links all these different things together is like the different ways in which, one can be trying to learn to code, level up to code. I've had this interesting series of experiences of involved in running a MOOC, which serves tens of thousands of students. Running a boot camp was serving these, very, very tightly focused groups of 30 students, working in open source projects with these sort of amorphous masses of people sort of picking up things here and there, Stack Overflow and so on. And then, the bricks and mortar university, where you've got these curriculum committees trying to say what's going to go into the courses and working with the local companies and so on. And I don't know, do you guys have a favorite way to learn? Are you both of you like self-taught? That's the thing, or what's your guys' poison as regards to mastering that latest bit of that latest code challenge?
The way that I usually teach myself stuff is I just jump right in and do something like quick and dirty as fast as I possibly can. Because I know that the first time I do a project in a new technology, I'm not going to do a very good job of it. But it's probably not going to be clear to me how to do a good job of it until I first do it badly. And then I can step back and say, okay, that went a certain way. And if I were to do it again, knowing what I know now, here's how I would do it. And then the second version goes better. I heard this really interesting comparison. I think it was today, actually. Somebody said it's like making pancakes. The first pancake you put in the pan is not going to be a very good one, but you have to make the first pancake in order to get to the rest of the pancakes. I thought that was like a perfect metaphor.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a good thing my cat likes those uncooked, kind of liquidy first round pancakes. So yeah, that's a good analogy.
Your cat?
My cat, yeah, he's a garbage disposal.
Your cat eats pancakes.
He eats everything.
Nice.
So waste not, want not, as they say in the UK. That's fantastic that you can manage that. Well, it also reminds me of I think it's Fred Brooks' Mythical Man Month, where he said, build one to throw away because you will anyway.
That's interesting. Yeah, and for me, learning, it's really, just like you, Jason, just kind of getting there and doing it, failing hard multiple times. I'll probably have 20 revision, or I guess my 20 version 1 apps. So I would have just completely scrapped the application multiple times, starting over with all the new things I learned on a new stack. So, I started learning programming. I started with like BASIC and Pascal and Fortran, back in the late 80s, early 90s. So there was no internet to look stuff up on. Books were way too expensive for me to afford. So it was just getting on that text editor and just keep trying until, I found something that worked, and then just went from there. So, I think it's interesting though. Everyone has such a different and unique learning style. Some people like reading blog posts. Some people like watching screencasts, and other people need that hands-on, in the university. So I think it's great that today that there are all of those different options available to people, almost to a point where if there is something that you want to learn, whether it's development or not development, there is no excuse. You have the tools, for the most part, readily available to you in one form or fashion.
Yes, indeed. It sounds like, is it maybe for both of you that you like, if you want to learn something, you're going to dive in and work with the documentation that's available. Do you guys not, I guess, sounds like probably you're not using MOOCs or screencasts or other online resources so much, or are there some online resources that you guys really love to go to for help and support?
Probably Google. If there's something I can't figure out, I think part of being a good developer is knowing how to ask the right questions to Google. So, and if it's not on Stack Overflow, then a solution probably doesn't exist. So
that's a great point. And just as a side note, when I'm mentoring people, oftentimes they'll get a weird error message and they'll start like scratching their head and thinking about what that error message means. And I'm like, hey, hang on, don't like try to figure this out yourself. Just copy and paste that error message into Google. Somebody else already figured what that's all about, and you can save yourself a ton of time by just Googling that error message. You've probably seen those like fake O'Reilly books, where the title of the book is Googling the error message. So it's like advanced Googling the error message. But Sam, you asked us a question. I forgot what the question was.
Oh, well, it was about the resources that you use to sort of scaffold your learning, and the Googling there. It's the funny thing is how many people in traditional education, the students may feel that if they're putting the error message into Google, that they're somehow cheating. I mean, it's so difficult to break the habits that some educational systems put into people. But do you have other? Go on.
The other funny thing is that like, if you get an answer from another student, that's cheating also. But like that in the real world, that's what you need to do. Like that's not cheating in the real world. That's like, it's a waste of time if you don't do that. But to answer your question, Sam, for me personally, I prefer, so I'm wildly impatient and I have a deep need to like go at my own pace with stuff. And sometimes my own pace is like, I need to go way faster. A lot of the times I need to go way slower because I'm actually kind of a slow learner. And like, I need to like reread things several times to like, okay, what the heck did they mean by this paragraph of text? And so I often, like when I started learning Rails, I bought The Rails Way and just read it cover to cover. I didn't necessarily even understand what I was looking at, but I at least put my eyeballs on every single page and read all the words. And so that's how I kind of teach myself that kind of stuff. I have a really hard time with video just because like I hit play and then 3 minutes in, I realize I haven't been paying attention at all. And I'm like, oh crap. So the random access of a book works way better than me for the sequential access of a video. That's my personal style.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
You know, when I started learning Rails, Railscast was a huge resource for me, and I am kind of the opposite, where I'm much more video driven, to where, you know, I can speed up the video, I can pause it, rewind it, slow it down if I need to. So, you know, to me, that kind of works better to have that visualization. You know, that's if I'm not just banging my head on the keyboard. So, a lot of my current learning with Rails and Ruby comes from the screencasting site that I host, driftingruby.com. And so, you know, I probably spend 16 hours a week doing each episode. You know, it may 8 to 16 depending on the content, but there's a lot of research and that goes into each episode to where there's always something that I'm learning, a different way of doing something, a different concept. So that's been a good learning resource for me as well to learn from. And that kind of has to go back to Jason's point of diving into a book or some text or blog to actually have to read it. And, you know, like you, Jason, I have a pretty poor reading comprehension. So I have to read the same thing over multiple times before it really sinks into my brain. But if someone were to just dictate, or, you know, not dictate, but if they were to just read that aloud to me, then I would have picked it up much more instantly. You know, it's just that, you know, brain connection from reading to understanding. It's just, you know, a challenge for me. So thank goodness there's multiple resources available.
Absolutely. Well, and thank goodness for Drifting Ruby, actually. By the way, I do love your site. And we record, for the other thing we do with AgileVentures is we record all of our pairing sessions and so on. But what we realized is, you know, while that's great for occasional looking back and so on, I think, you know, we need things like Railscast and Drifting Ruby to, like, you know, focus, prepared things. It's you know, pair programming is great for learning, but it's, you know, not, most people have not got the time to sift through videos of other people's pairing sessions in order to work out how to get stuff done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about AgileVentures, or, you know, any other questions or things?
Well, I guess the only other thing that's sort of on my mind is the corollary to your point about, you know, there are so many different resources out there, is, you know, how the kind of the current ecosystem works and sort of, you know, is sustainable. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, we're hoping to move AgileVentures towards sustainability. I mean, the MOOCs have evolved over 4 or 5 years from being this, you know, total free-for-alls, everybody free for everything. And, you know, the companies have been experimenting with different models, and now, you know, you can't get the honor certificates anymore, I think from Coursera and edX, and it's moved to more of paid models. You know, other sites, like, I've been really impressed with Udemy, which makes a lot of courses, mainly they're paid, which is, you know, I'm kind of a big fan of open source and everything available for free. But I think, you know, the people putting in their hard work to, you know, get the materials made and ready and available definitely deserve to be compensated when they're doing, you know, fantastic work. And there's kind of we have this, I don't know, it's a funny situation where, you know, some people get paid well for doing the educational support work that they do, and others, are kind of giving it away because they're just doing fantastic work on open source projects. But also then people kind of burn out supporting those open source projects and so on. And I think it's just it'll be interesting to see how that tension between the open source and making things available for free for everybody to learn, but then also in bootcamp survive because they charge big fees for their courses. How we can sort of ensure that everybody is getting a sustainable lifestyle off this big cornucopia of resources, I think is kind of an open problem, at least an open problem for me. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that's a interesting point, probably a whole different talk about just kind of the concept of passing the torch, because there are so many open source projects that have started with a lot of drive, a lot of motivation, and just a lot of good speed. But then over the years, the project kind of just slowly winds down and dies, just no longer being supported. So, people have moved on to other interests and stuff. So, I think it would, maybe a good point to say that when you do start working on a project and when it does start to get some momentum, while you are so really interested in it, find someone to help collaborate with you on the project. If it's an open source project, have that other person that you would be willing to hand the torch over to if you ever decide that this isn't what I want or need to do anymore. Because there's been a lot of projects out there that have just kind of died down without anyone to really pick up the slack.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, I think it's the EFF I think there's some other organizations that do a kind of shepherding and support for open source projects. I think there's also like a transparent open funding framework. There's so many of these different things now. I think it's called Open Collective, which tries to help fund open source projects and so on. I think it's something we'd also like to be doing in Agile Ventures, is providing that kind of framework where people doing open source projects can get more help and support so that they are sustainable and that they can more easily find someone else to pass it on to in the community in the long run. I think there's definitely a lot of challenges remaining there. I mean, like you're doing drifting Ruby in your spare time, right, Dave?
Yeah, it definitely is. Spare night times.
But and it's kind of, we've got to work out some way to make sure that you are well compensated for that. I would say going forward.
Yeah, it's been something where I've kind of seen it as a way to give back, just because of the help I've received over the years and stuff. It's been a fun project.
I mean that's beautiful to give back, and I think particularly for you to find the space to do that, it's a wonderful thing. We're all very grateful.
Yeah. Well,
Sam, if people want to find Agile Ventures and find you online, where should they go? What should they look at?
Absolutely. I mean, agileventures.org is the place to come. Sign up for a free account there. You'll get invited into our Slack instance. I'll greet you. We'll try and have a chat and see if there's a charity open source project that you could get involved in. I'm Tansaku, TANSAKU on Twitter and GitHub and other places. Oh, I've got extra U on Twitter after I got hacked. Oh no! But put all the links in the show notes. But yeah, so I'm Twitter, GitHub, and just agileventures.org. Get into our Slack thing. We're all Slack addicts and in there all the time. So that's the place. And come and get involved if you want to, like Dave, come and give back. And you can't by yourself make such an amazing site like Drifting Ruby. Come and we'll try and hook you up with a charity who has a need for some IT engineering, software engineering support.
Awesome.
Well, great.
Dear Ruby developer, are you sick and tired of working on crappy old legacy code bases? There's got to be a better way. If you want to get a better job, here's what you can do. Find a technology that's really in demand, build a side project using that technology, and then use that side project as experience to get your next better job. I've done this myself several times. It definitely works. what I think is a really good technology to learn right now is Angular. Angular is really in demand right now, and it's not going away anytime soon. I have a free guide to getting started with Angular and Rails at angularonrails.com/rr. Good luck and enjoy this episode of Ruby Rogues.
Shall we move to picks?
Yeah, picks are good.
I just have one pick. It's a very selfish pick this time. Occasionally I plug myself on the show. So I offer a few different services. I do training and custom development and also like one-on-one mentorship. And I'm generally available for that sort of thing. So if you have any need, dear listener, for that sort of thing, you can contact me at jason@benfranklinlabs.com and we can talk about that. And that is my pick. How about you, Sam?
Oh yeah, I got a few. The first one is I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Stephen Grinders. He's got an Elixir Phoenix course on Udemy, and it actually relates to the earlier on. I usually like to just sort of dive in, but one of my sort of colleagues on AgileVentures recommended this and sort of promoted it for his project, and I've been really impressed. I think more than just the basic tutorial. His stuff on Elixir Phoenix on Udemy is really great. I'll get you the link for the show notes. Around another movie, I just watched the Doctor Strange movie, and I kind of really loved it. I loved that Doctor Strange movie. I hadn't been a particular fan of his comic books, but I do like Benedict Cumberbatch, so that was great fun the other night. And final sort of bit of self-promotion, we've actually started our own podcast called the Agile Book Club, and we're working through sort of agile books on the agile process and user stories and so on, and reviewing a couple of chapters each week and doing sort of a round discussion on that, which we're having a lot of fun with, exploring different ways to do the agile software development process.
Oh, nice. And that's out right now. If I search for the Agile Book Club on iTunes or whatever, I can find it.
I think it's going to be on we've got soundcloud.com/AgileVentures, and the first episode should be out within the next couple of weeks. But yeah, if you go to soundcloud.com/AgileVentures, as soon as the first episode is out, it'll be there.
Cool.
Okay, cool. So I imagine by the time this podcast goes out, that'll be out there. Okay.
That'll be out. Yeah.
Cool. I'll have to piggyback off your pick, Sam, and pick the whole Marvel franchise. I grew up reading Marvel comic books, and I've seen like all of the new Marvel movies. So Doctor Strange was a cool one. I like that. So, and wasn't whoever that guy is, Cucumber Benedict?
The man with the unpronounceable name, yeah.
Cucumber Benedict. The breakfast.
Sorry.
I think Benedict Cumberbatch, I'm told, is how it's said. But yeah, he was. And I loved him in the new Star Trek. He was in the Star Trek as Khan. Yeah, did you see that one?
Oh, really?
I saw that one.
Didn't he also play Sherlock in this own little series? Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. The mod update. Yeah.
So,
he's
my real pick is Guard, which is a command line tool that easily handles file system modifications. So it'll trigger different events. So for example, if you have Brakeman or a RSpec or a test suite running on your application, then you can have the Brakeman or the test suites automatically get triggered in your console. So as you're making changes, it'll automatically retest those modified files, just so you don't have to run your full test suite or worry about that. You can just have it running in the background off to the side and have it do ground notifications or anything like that. So pretty cool stuff.
Awesome.
Well, Sam, we thank you very much for joining us today. And, I'll be sure to follow you on Twitter and check out AgileVentures.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Great talking with you, Sam.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.